Linsey Mallow leaned back in the balcony chair, her silk robe catching the late afternoon light. The phone pressed against her ear. She let out a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I can't wait to marry Justin," she said, her voice low and deliberate. "And once I do, I'll finally take control of that boy, Marion. He has far too much say over his father's life. As his stepmother, I'll be the one in charge. That child will learn his place." She paused, listening to the voice on the other end, her lips curled. "Yes, I've worked my way into his life ever since his wife passed. I told him he needed a partner again, someone to keep the house and the family in order. I even convinced the board that a man of his stature should remarry quickly. And well, who better than me?" What Linsey didn't know was that she wasn't alone. Marion had stepped out onto the upstairs landing, intending to grab the book he'd left on the balcony table earlier, but the sound of her voice stopped him cold. He froze in the shadow of the doorway, the breeze carrying every word to him with perfect clarity. His chest tightened. It had been just over a year since his mother died. Just a year since the hospital room, the flowers, the whispered goodbyes. And now, this. His father had been quieter since then, less certain in his decisions, often glancing toward the empty side of the bed at night. Marion could see how easily Linsey had slipped into that space, always smiling when Justin was around, always agreeing with him, always asking about his day. But when Justin wasn't there, she was different. He remembered the first time she'd snapped at him. It was over breakfast, just weeks after she began visiting regularly. She told him to stop slouching like a stray and act like someone worthy of his last name. He had been too stunned to reply. Marion clutched the doorframe now, listening to her words twist into something colder. "I don't care if he likes me," Linsey continued on the phone. "He's a child. He'll do as he's told once I'm his stepmother. Justin can't see it now, but I'll be the one running this household. The boy will adjust, or he'll learn the hard way." Marion's stomach turned. The warm evening air suddenly felt heavy, pressing against him. He didn't wait to hear more. He turned, bolting silently down the hall toward his bedroom. Inside, he shut the door and pressed his back against it, heart pounding. He was only 9, but he understood exactly what Linsey had meant. She wasn't going to try to love him. She wasn't going to be a friend. She wanted control over him, over his father, over everything. He thought about telling Justin. But would his father believe him? Linsey was careful. Around Justin, she was sweet and patient, smiling at Marion as though he were her own son. And Justin, lost in his grief, seemed to believe she was a gift sent to help him heal. Marion sank onto his bed, staring at the framed photo of his mother on the nightstand. Her warm eyes smiled back at him through the glass. And for a moment, his throat tightened. He whispered into the quiet room, "I miss you, Mom. I wish you were here." From the hallway came the faint sound of Linsey's heels, clicking on the floor. She was moving through the house now, probably still on the phone, her voice a distant hum. Marion pulled the blanket up to his chin. He knew he couldn't stop the wedding on his own. But he also knew something Linsey didn't. His mother had always told him that truth finds a way out. And if Linsey thought he'd roll over and let her run his life, she was in for a surprise. This wasn't over. Not even close. Over the next few weeks, Marion began quietly testing Linsey. He wasn't sure how else to make his father see her for who she really was. The first time, he claimed his stomach hurt just before school. His father, Justin, immediately canceled his morning meeting to stay home with him. Linsey had hovered nearby, smiling thinly, setting down a glass of ginger ale and a warm blanket. "Poor thing," she cooed. But when Justin left the room to take a call, her expression changed in an instant. "You're not fooling me," she whispered, leaning down so close Marion could feel her breath. "If you think you can play sick to get in the way of my plans, you're going to regret it." Then, as soon as Justin returned, her face lit up again. "I think he needs more rest, darling. Why don't you sit with him for a bit?" Marion tried again a few days later, clutching his head and saying it hurt too much to go outside. Justin was immediately concerned, suggesting they see a doctor. Linsey, her jaw tight, offered to make soup. She ladled it into a bowl with deliberate slowness, and when she placed it in front of him, her voice was so low it was almost a growl. "Keep this up, and you'll wish you hadn't," she said. "I can make your life much harder than it already is." Marion didn't respond. He knew any retort would be twisted and used against him. Instead, he kept his eyes on the soup, pretending he hadn't heard. Despite the threats, he continued his little acts, each time hoping that maybe, just maybe, his father would notice the strain in Linsey's smile, or the sharp edge in her voice when she thought no one was listening. One evening, Justin sat at the foot of Marion's bed, concern etched into his face. "You've been sick a lot lately, buddy," he said. "Do you think something's bothering you? You can talk to me." For a moment, Marion thought about spilling everything. The overheard phone call, the threats, the coldness in her eyes. But Linsey's warning echoed in his head, and he simply shook his head. "I'm just tired, Dad. That's all." Justin ruffled his hair and stood. "All right. Just know I'm here for you." As soon as he left the room, Marion turned toward his window, gripping the blanket in his fists. He knew he had to be patient. He couldn't fight Linsey head-on. Not yet. But the day would come when she'd slip up in front of his father. And when that day came, Marion would be ready. Marion's plan began to take shape one rainy Saturday afternoon. He'd been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when he remembered the old digital recorder tucked in the back of his desk drawer. His mother had given it to him 2 years ago for a school project. He tested it, the tiny screen glowing in the dim light of his room. Still worked. From that day forward, Marion carried it in the pocket of his hoodie or slipped it under the couch cushions when Linsey was around. He didn't get lucky every time. Sometimes she stayed perfectly sweet, speaking only in her syrupy, Justin voice. But other times, like the morning she came into his room without knocking. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she said, her smile gone. "Pretending to be sick, trying to get Daddy's attention. Well, I've got news for you. When I marry him, I'm the one in charge. And if you make me look bad, I'll make sure every single day of your life feels like a punishment." Marion kept his eyes on his homework, nodding slightly as though he were listening to her. The recorder in his hoodie pocket caught every word. Then there was the night she hissed at him in the kitchen after Justin had gone upstairs, accusing him of trying to turn Daddy against her. She leaned in close, her perfume too strong, her voice a knife in the quiet. "You keep pushing me, Marion, and you'll see how far I can push back." Click. Another recording saved. The more he gathered, the braver he felt. Still, he didn't confront her. Not yet. He had to wait until Justin could hear it for himself, without her twisting the story. But patience was hard. One evening, Marion sat in the living room playing a game on the floor when Justin came home late from work. Linsey floated toward him in her silk dress, kissing his cheek, asking about his day. But when Justin left the room to take a call, she looked down at Marion, her eyes sharp. "Keep that smug look off your face," she said softly. "Your little games won't work forever." Marion just smiled. This time, the recorder was hidden inside the open Monopoly box beside him. In his mind, he could already see the moment. Daddy sitting across from him, headphones on, hearing the truth for the first time. And when that moment came, Linsey's perfect little act would shatter into pieces. The engagement party glittered with crystal glasses, gold-rimmed plates, and the hum of polite conversation. Linsey moved through the crowd like a politician, smiling, laughing, touching arms as she charmed Justin's business partners, neighbors, and family friends. Justin followed her lead, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Marion stood near the corner of the room, nursing a cup of sparkling cider. He wasn't dressed like the other kids in the room. No tailored blazer, no polished shoes. Just a collared shirt and the sneakers his mother had bought him before she passed. He didn't care about clothes, but he knew Linsey did. He could feel her eyes on him, sharp and calculating. She caught him watching her and excused herself from the group. Crossing the room, she bent down just enough to be at his level, her voice as sweet as frosting but edged with steel. "Me and your father, have been talking, she began. And we think maybe boarding school would be best for you. You'd get a better education, more discipline, and, she smiled, we'd have more time to enjoy our marriage without distractions. Marion's stomach dropped. His chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. He didn't respond, he couldn't. Instead, he turned and walked quickly toward the door, weaving between the legs of adults who didn't notice the 9-year-old slipping away from the celebration. By the time he stepped outside, the night air hit him like a slap. He kept walking, his sneakers scuffing the pavement. He didn't know where he was going. He just needed to get away. The sound of laughter and music from the party grew faint behind him. He turned down the sidewalk, his mind racing. He wasn't looking at the street, barely aware of the cars rushing past. All he could hear was her voice in his head. We'd have more time to enjoy our marriage without distractions. That's when he stepped off the curb. A horn blared. Marion froze in the middle of the lane, headlights bearing down on him. He didn't even register the figure moving toward him until a strong hand yanked him backward by the arm. They stumbled together onto the sidewalk. Marion looked up through tear-blurred eyes at a young woman, mid-20s, dark hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing a leather jacket over a simple dress. "Whoa, hey, easy," she said, kneeling slightly so she could look him in the eye. "You okay? You almost got yourself killed out there." Marion's breathing was uneven, shallow. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. He wanted to speak, but all that came out was a sob. Ava, though he didn't know her name yet, placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You're too young to be wandering alone, especially at night. Where are your parents?" He shook his head, wiping at his face with his sleeve. She glanced back toward the glowing windows of the engagement party. "Come on," she said gently. "Let's get you somewhere safe." And for the first time in a long time, Marion felt like someone was actually on his side. Marion's breathing finally slowed, the cold night air cooling his flushed face. Ava crouched down beside him, her eyes soft but searching. "Why'd you run from the party?" she asked, her voice low enough to feel safe. Marion hesitated, his fingers worrying the hem of his shirt. "My mother died last year," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "And my dad? He's being forced to marry this mean woman who hates me." His throat tightened. "She's trying to get rid of me, and I don't know what to do. He thinks she's this wonderful person who can help us heal." Ava's brows pulled together, sympathy flashing in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Do you think if you talked to him, really talked, he'd listen?" "Yes," Marion admitted, "but Linsey will just twist it. She'll tell them I'm still grieving, and that I need time. She'll say everything will be okay, that I'm just acting out. And with her sweet talk," he shook his head, bitterness in his voice, "he'll believe her." Before Ava could reply, a voice rang out from up the street. "Marion." Marion's head snapped toward the sound, his father's voice, loud and edged with panic. Justin Carter strode toward them, his ties slightly loosened, scanning the sidewalk until he spotted his son. "There you are," Justin said, his voice dropping to a mix of relief and exasperation. "You had me worried sick. You left the party without telling anyone." "I just needed some air," Marion muttered. "Too many people." Then, glancing at Ava, he added, "Dad, this is Ava. She was just keeping me company until I went back inside." Justin turned to her, extending a hand. "Hi, I'm Justin Carter. Thanks for watching him." Ava shook his hand lightly. "No problem. He's too young to be out here alone." She gave a small, almost shy smile. "I work at the coffee shop down the street." Before Justin could say more, a new voice cut in. "Darling, there you are." Linsey's heels clicked sharply against the sidewalk as she approached, her perfectly styled hair gleaming under the streetlights. "People are asking for you, and Marion." She slid her arm around Justin's, her smile bright and possessive. Her eyes, however, flicked briefly to Ava with a cool calculation. "Who is this?" Ava opened her mouth before Justin could answer. "Nobody important," she said simply, offering a small shrug. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time. She turned to Marion with a faint smile. Hey, you know where to find me. Take care, she added before stepping away, disappearing into the stream of pedestrians. Linsey turned her attention back to Marion, her voice sugar-sweet. Marion, sweetheart, who was that lady? She's just a friend, he said quickly, eyes down. Linsey's gaze lingered in the direction Ava had gone, but she didn't press further. Come on. The party's waiting. They walked back together, Justin on one side, Linsey on the other, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder in what looked affectionate but felt like a leash. Inside, the warmth and chatter of the engagement party closed in on Marion again, but his mind was still outside on the sidewalk, with Ava's calm voice, her concerned eyes, and the simple fact that she had stopped to help when she didn't have to. Later that night, after the last guest left and the house was quiet, Marion lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about what Ava had asked. Do you think if you talked to him, he'd listen? He wanted to believe the answer was yes. But until he had proof, real proof, Linsey would always win. He reached under his pillow and felt the hard shape of the recorder, still there from earlier. He thought about what it contained now. Linsey's threats, her cold promises, her disdain for him. Not yet, he told himself, but soon, and maybe, Ava could help. The next afternoon, Marion walked down the street toward the coffee shop, the recorder in his pocket. He didn't know exactly what he would say, but he knew Ava was different. She believed him. And for the first time in months, that gave him hope. What Marion didn't see was Linsey, standing at the upstairs window, watching him head toward the coffee shop. Her smile was small and dangerous. She was already making plans of her own. Marion had found his safe place. The coffee shop wasn't anything fancy. Mismatched chairs, the smell of cinnamon and espresso, soft music humming from hidden speakers. But it felt like the one corner of the world where Linsey's voice couldn't reach him. Ava always seemed to have time for him, even during the afternoon rush. She'd slide him a warm muffin or a hot chocolate, then sit across from him when she could, listening like every word he said mattered. In just a few weeks, she'd learned more about him than Linsey had bothered to in a year. She knew his favorite books were the adventure stories his mom used to read aloud at night. She knew he liked old board games, even though he rarely had anyone to play them with. She knew the movies he watched over and over when he missed his mom too much to sleep. And she knew the other side too, the fears he didn't tell anyone else, that Linsey might send him away to boarding school, that his father wouldn't believe him if he told the truth, that someday he might forget the sound of his mother's voice. Ava didn't give him false promises. She just listened. Sometimes that was enough. He'd gotten into the habit of sending his dad quick texts, going to see Ava. Justin usually just sent back a short reply, okay, be careful. But Marion didn't mind. It meant his dad knew where he was, and it kept Linsey from asking questions. One Thursday afternoon, Marion was sitting in their usual booth, Ava across from him with her hair pulled into a loose braid. They were bent over a sheet of paper, laughing as they drew ridiculous cartoons of themselves fighting evil coffee monsters. Marion was mid-laugh when a shadow fell across the table. "Dad?" he said, startled. Justin stood there, still in his work suit, holding a paper cup. "Hey, buddy, I was just passing by, got off work early, thought I'd grab a coffee." His eyes moved to Ava. "Nice to see you again." Ava smiled warmly, standing to shake his hand. "That's me. I hope it's okay he comes here. We mostly just talk and draw monsters, apparently." She gestured to the paper, which made Justin chuckle. "It's more than okay," Justin said. His gaze lingered on Marion's face, still flushed from laughter. It hit him suddenly. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen his son laugh like that. Not since before his wife died. Justin took a seat on the edge of the booth. "You seem to like it here." Marion grinned. "Yeah, Ava's cool." The rest of the conversation was light. Justin asked about the shop. Ava told a funny story about a customer who tried to order a decaf espresso with extra caffeine. But underneath it all, Justin felt something he hadn't in a long time. Hope. As he left the coffee shop with his drink, he glanced back at the booth where Ava and Marion were still talking. For the first time in over a year, Justin thought maybe, just maybe, someone had been sent to help his family heal. An angel in disguise. Marion's birthday was approaching, and the house buzzed with preparations. Linsey had orchestrated the event like she was hosting a society gala, polished invitations, a guest list heavy with Justin's business associates and their families, and a catering menu more suited for a corporate luncheon than a 9-year-old celebration. But when Marion handed Justin his small, handwritten list of people he wanted to come, there was one name he made sure to include: Ava. On the day of the party, the backyard was strung with expensive white lanterns, tables covered with crisp linens, and servers circulating with trays of food most kids wouldn't touch. Marion scanned the crowd impatiently until he saw her. Ava, in a simple sundress, carrying a wrapped package under one arm. "Ava," he shouted, racing across the lawn. He wrapped his arms around her waist in a hug so fierce it made Justin look twice. Ava laughed, hugging him back. "Happy birthday, kiddo." From across the yard, Justin and Linsey watched. Justin noted how instantly relaxed his son seemed, how freely he smiled. Linsey, however, kept her face neutral, her eyes narrowing just slightly. When it came time for gifts, the guests gathered around. Linsey stepped forward first, presenting a gleaming, oversized box wrapped in expensive gold paper. Marion tore it open to reveal the latest gaming console, complete with extra controllers and a stack of brand-new games. "Thanks," Marion said politely. He set it aside with a small smile. Then Ava handed him her gift, a long, slim box wrapped in blue paper. He tore it open and gasped, his eyes going wide. "A telescope." He looked up at her, his face lit with pure joy. "You remembered." Justin blinked. "I forgot. You love looking at the stars." Marion nodded eagerly. "Me and Mom used to spend hours on the balcony, just looking. We'd make up stories about the constellations." Ava smiled softly. "I'd do anything to see that smile on his face every day." Justin's heart swelled at the sight of his son's excitement. He glanced toward Linsey, expecting her to share in the moment, but her jaw was tight, her smile frozen. Linsey took everything inside her not to explode then and there. Later, after the guests had gone and Marion was upstairs, setting up his new telescope on the balcony, Linsey found Justin in the living room. "Darling," she began carefully, "I've been thinking. Marion's spending a lot of time with Ava lately. I'm not sure she's the right kind of person for him." Justin looked up from his glass. "What do you mean?" "Well," Linsey smoothed her hair, adopting a thoughtful tone. "Her lack of money, her social background, and who knows what kind of education she's had. I just don't think she matches the image we should be cultivating for our family." Justin's brows drew together. "Are you saying I don't know what's best for my son?" Linsey hesitated. "I just think." "Ava makes him smile," Justin said, his voice firm. "Something you haven't managed to do in the few months we've been involved." Linsey's cheeks flushed, but she kept her tone light. "I just don't want him to get attached to someone who doesn't fit our social image. It could be awkward in the future." Justin set his glass down. "Linsey, it's been a long day. Let's say goodnight. We can talk later." She forced a tight smile. "Of course." As she walked toward the door, her heels clicking against the hardwood, her face hardened. She could feel the anger bubbling just under the surface, contained only by sheer will. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Ava had just made herself an obstacle, and Linsey never let obstacles stand for long. The coffee shop felt strangely empty without Ava behind the counter. Marion stood near the pastry case, hands in his pockets, scanning the space as though she might still appear from the back. One of the servers, a young woman with tired eyes and a kind voice, noticed him. "She's not here anymore, sweetheart," she said gently. Marion's head jerked up. "What do you mean?" "She transferred to another location," the server explained. "Happened just this morning." "But why?" The woman hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. "Someone kept calling yesterday, complaining about her. All day. We think it was the same person. It was enough to cause trouble." Marion's stomach dropped. He didn't need to guess who it was. He pulled out his phone and dialed his dad. When Justin answered, Marion's voice cracked. "Someone ran Ava away. I can't see her anymore." His words came faster, tumbling over each other. She's the only one who listens, and now she's gone. His voice broke completely, tears spilling over. Marion, slow down, I'm coming home, Justin said, his tone urgent. That night, Justin couldn't get his son to eat. In fact, Marion barely touched food the next 3 days. The boy who had just started to laugh again now sat at the dinner table like a shadow, eyes fixed on his plate. Justin knew he had to fix it. On the 4th day, he tracked Ava down at her new coffee shop location. She was behind the counter, wiping down the espresso machine. When she looked up and saw him, her eyebrows shot up. "Justin? I need your help," he said without preamble. "Marion won't eat, won't talk. He misses you." Her expression softened instantly. "Then I'll visit him." When she walked into the Carter house later that afternoon, Marion was curled up on the couch, flipping through a book he wasn't really reading. The second he saw her, he was on his feet, nearly knocking her over with the force of his hug. "Your dad says you're not eating," Ava said, looking him over. "How about we go out for pizza? Just you and me?" Marion turned to Justin. "You coming, Dad?" Justin shook his head. "I need to talk with Linsey. You go ahead." That got Linsey's attention. She had been standing by the staircase, sipping a glass of wine. "You're just going to let your child leave with a woman he hardly knows?" she asked sharply. Justin turned to her, his voice calm but deliberate. "What's Marion's favorite color?" She blinked. "What?" "His favorite color," Justin repeated. "Or the books he likes to read. Do you know the names of any of his teachers at school?" Linsey's face tightened. "Why does that matter?" "Because those things make Marion the person he is," Justin said, his voice now carrying an edge. "And I'm ashamed that this woman you call a stranger knows more about my son than the woman I was going to marry." Linsey's eyes narrowed. "You said was." "Yes," Justin replied evenly. "That's what I need to talk to you about." Her voice rose, sharp and brittle. "You're going to let that brat ruin everything? He needs to know his place." Justin's tone thundered, louder than Marion had ever heard. "Though, you are going to know your place. He comes first, before you. Before anything." Linsey's face went pale. "What about her?" She pointed toward the door, where Ava and Marion had just left. "How does she fit into this picture?" Justin's voice was steady, resolute. "She's here because she's helping my son find his way back to being himself." "That's a lie," Linsey snapped. "She manipulated you for your money." From the doorway, a small but strong voice cut through the air. "You're lying." Both adults turned. Marion had returned, his cheeks flushed from the cool air outside. Ava behind him, looking confused but concerned. "You want my dad's money," Marion continued, stepping forward. "I have recordings of you, on the phone, saying you wanted to send me away and threatening me." Justin's head whipped toward his son. "Recordings?" Marion nodded, pulling a small digital recorder from his hoodie pocket. "I've been saving them, so you'd believe me." Justin stepped forward, his expression hardening as he turned to Linsey. "You've been threatening my son? He's making this up. Get out, now." His voice cracked like a whip, leaving no room for argument. Linsey froze for a moment, her eyes darting between them. Then, with a sharp pivot, she stormed toward the front door. Her heels struck the floor like gunshots, until the door slammed shut behind her. Silence filled the house. Justin knelt down in front of Marion, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I thought you wouldn't believe me," Marion whispered. "She was always so nice when you were around." Justin's eyes softened. "I should have seen it. And sorry." Ava stepped forward, crouching beside them. "Hey, you don't have to worry about her anymore. She's gone." For the first time in days, Marion's lips curved into a faint smile. "So, pizza?" Justin let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "Yeah, pizza." They went out that night, the three of them, sitting in a corner booth of a small pizzeria. Marion ate more than he had in a week, talking between bites, telling stories about school, his telescope, and the constellations he and his mom used to name. Ava listened intently, and Justin just watched. Watched his son come alive again, and for the first time since his wife's death, Justin felt certain of something. Whatever shape their future took, Ava would be in it. Linsey sat at the polished mahogany conference table, legs crossed, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she adjusted the papers in front of her. The quarterly board meeting for Carter Enterprises was well underway, but she hadn't come for the numbers. She had come for something else, a chance to finally rid herself of Ava Crawley. When the discussion turned to new business, Linsey cleared her throat. "I have a matter to bring up," she began smoothly, her voice carrying across the long table. "It's about a woman who's recently been spending a great deal of time with Justin and his son. I believe she's a bad influence." A few board members shifted in their seats. "Go on," the chairman said. Linsey tilted her head, fading concern. "Her name is Ava. I don't know her last name. She works at some little coffee shop, hardly the kind of person who should be surrounding someone in Justin's position, especially influencing his son. I think it's something we should consider carefully, given the image of the company." Before she could continue, one of the older members, a white-haired man in a navy suit, leaned forward. "Are you talking about Ava Crawley?" Linsey blinked. "I don't know her last name, but she works in some small coffee shop near Justin's home." The man sat back in his chair, a slow, knowing smile on his face. "That's my granddaughter you're talking about." Several heads around the table turned toward him in surprise. "She owns a chain of those little coffee shops," he continued evenly. "Over 200 locations nationwide, and she's worth, last time I checked, about $200 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Linsey's mouth opened, then closed again. "Well, I had no idea." Another board member, Harold Lawson, a sharp-eyed man with a deep voice, leaned in. "Let me ask you something, Linsey," he said, his tone deceptively casual. "When you say she looks like, her background is He paused, locking eyes with her. "Do you mean she looks like a normal person, or are you talking about her skin color?" A murmur moved through the room. Linsey stiffened. "I simply meant, because if you are," Harold continued, his voice dropping lower but carrying even more weight, "then we have another issue to address entirely." Linsey's cheeks flushed crimson. "That's not what I—" But Harold cut her off. "You're sitting here questioning a self-made millionaire's background, while she's been quietly helping Justin's son recover from losing his mother. Meanwhile," he tilted his head, "you've been rushing a man into marriage before he's even finished grieving. Does that sound like the behavior of someone who should be giving moral lectures?" Linsey's face twisted, her composure cracking for the first time in the meeting. "This is absurd. I'm simply looking out for yourself," Harold finished for her. A low chuckle came from the far end of the table. "Well," another member said, "I think we've established that Ms. Crawley is more than capable of representing herself and the company, should she choose to." Linsey gripped the edge of her folder so tightly her knuckles turned white. "You're all missing the point." "No, Linsey," Harold said flatly. "We see the point very clearly, and we don't like it." The chairman leaned forward, folding his hands. "I think we're done with this topic, unless you have something constructive to add, Ms. Mallow." Linsey pushed back her chair, the scrape of its legs echoing through the room. "No," she said tightly. She gathered her papers and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor of the hallway. But her steps weren't as sure as usual. There was a tremor there, an unevenness. By the time she reached the elevator, her face was a mask of rage. Her plan hadn't just failed. It had backfired spectacularly. Not only had she failed to smear Ava's name, she'd been humiliated, publicly, in front of the very people she had hoped to sway. She stabbed the elevator button, jaw clenched. This wasn't over. But deep down, Linsey knew something she couldn't admit, not even to herself. This time she might have picked a fight she couldn't win. A year had passed since Linsey's dramatic exit from their lives. The house felt lighter now, the air warmer somehow. Marion had grown taller, his smile more frequent, and the shadows in his eyes had mostly faded. Much of that, Justin knew, was thanks to Ava. One Saturday afternoon, Marion sat at the kitchen table, flipping lazily through a magazine while Justin sipped coffee. "Dad," Marion said suddenly, glancing up, Don't you think it's time you asked Ava out on a date? Justin nearly choked on his drink. What? Marion grinned. I mean, you've been spending all this time with her, and she's been here for both of us. After Linsey, yeah, I get it. You didn't want to rush into anything. But Ava's nothing like her. Justin chuckled, shaking his head. No, she's not. His voice softened. I still needed time to grieve, Marion. Losing your mother, that wasn't something I could just get past overnight. I know, Marion said quietly. But you're smiling again, and Ava makes you smile a lot. Mom would want that. Justin studied his son's earnest expression and felt something loosen in his chest. He set his coffee down. You're right, it's time. Just then, the front door opened, and Ava stepped inside, a breeze carrying the scent of roasted coffee and cinnamon with her. Hey guys, she said, setting her bag on the counter. Marion stood, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. I'm gonna go to my room, he said with a sly grin. Dad needs to talk to you. Ava's brow furrowed as she watched him disappear upstairs. That sounds ominous. Should I be worried? Justin felt the nervous flutter in his stomach, the kind he hadn't felt in years. No, he said, smiling faintly. Not worried, just something I should have asked you a long time ago. She tilted her head, curious. All right, so what is this about? He took a breath, running a hand through his hair. Ava, would you go out on a date with me? And I'd like to see how far we can go with this, between us. For a moment, Ava's eyes widened, and then she laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that seemed to melt all the tension in the room. You two are stuck with me. That's not even a question. Justin's shoulders eased, relief washing over him. Really? So, does that mean I can kiss you then? Her smile grew, lighting up her face. You'd better. She stepped forward, closing the space between them, and placed her hands lightly on his chest. Justin's hand cupped her cheek as he leaned in. Their lips met, soft at first, then more certain, a quiet promise in the gentle pressure. When they broke apart, Ava's cheeks were flushed, her smile still bright. Took you long enough, she teased. From upstairs, Marion's voice called out, I heard that, and it's about time. Justin laughed, pulling Ava into another quick kiss. For the first time since his wife's passing, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like something to look forward to. And with Ava by his side, he knew they could face anything. Thanks for listening to Green Tea Tales. Help our channel to grow with comments, likes, and subscribe.